Welcome to Simpler Bible, a daily journey to biblical understanding. Today, we bring 2 Kings to a close. We're going to bring the Kings to a close. Now listen, the thing that's messy about it is if you're really wanting to do kind of a chronological reading of the Old Testament, this last chapter and a half of 2 Kings would be interdispersed with Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, and some of the other prophets. And so we're going to move on into the prophets after this, but I'm going to keep reminding you, we're going to keep coming back to this. I have some notes on this that I keep saying we will take photos of. Somebody's already scanned them all. I will reach out to them and we will put these pictures up for you. But if you can keep these three kings, keep a note of these last three kings of Judah somewhere, these last three kings of Jerusalem, it will help you a great deal. So in his days, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up and Jehoiakim became his servant for 3 years and then turned and rebelled against him. Now, one of the things, we have these three kings, I've listed them here. Jehoiakim is going to be a king for 11 years, and then Jehoiachin for 3 months, and then Zedekiah for 11 years. Now, Nebuchadnezzar, who I'm going to call Nebby, is going to become king in the 3rd year of Jehoiakim. All right, that's very important for us. It's going to help figure into a lot of our math because this is also where the book of Daniel begins. All right, the book of Daniel begins in the 1st year of the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar. Jehoiachin gets taken into captivity after his 3 months, and this is where the book of Ezekiel begins. So the book of Jeremiah has started before this. Jeremiah became a prophet during the reign of Josiah, in the 18th year of the reign of Josiah, when Josiah was doing all the reforms. And so, in the 13th year of Josiah. And so earlier than Josiah doing the reforms. So these books, Daniel, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, are all happening in this time frame here. Very, very important. Jeremiah, Daniel, and Ezekiel are all contemporaries. Their books are all overlapping. Jeremiah is the old prophet who stays in Jerusalem. Ezekiel is the young prophet who is taken into captivity in Babylon. Daniel is the prophet who has risen to power in Babylon as a forerunner of the people of God to protect them and provide an umbrella hedge of protection for them, much like Joseph had done, or Moses, or as we will see later, Esther. So again, in his days, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up, and Jehoiakim became his servant for 3 years, and then turned and rebelled against him. And the Lord sent against him, against Jehoiakim, the Chaldeans. The Chaldeans are the Babylonians, and the bands of the Syrians, and the bands of the Moabites, and the bands of the Ammonites, and sent them against Judah to destroy it, according to the word of the Lord that he spoke by his servants the prophets. Surely this came upon Judah at the command of the Lord to remove them out of his sight for the sins that Manasseh had done, according to all that he had done, which we saw yesterday, and also for the innocent blood that he had shed, for he had filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, and the Lord would not pardon. We saw Manasseh 2 days ago, but we saw yesterday that God said to Josiah, look, you've made reforms. I'm not going to destroy it in your day, but because of the wickedness of Manasseh, I am bringing Judah to an end. So he says, now the rest of the deeds of Jehoiakim and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? Jehoiakim slept with his fathers, and Jehoiachin, his son, reigned in his place. And the king of Egypt did not come again out of his land, for the king of Babylon had taken all that belonged to the king of Egypt, for the brook Egypt to the river Euphrates. I do want to tell you, if you're reading the book of Jeremiah, well, we'll get to it. Why am I getting you ahead? I don't know that you're in the book of Jeremiah. We'll get to it. So Jehoiachin, and it's really interesting because I say it chin so that I can remember, but it's really Jehoiachin. It's like the CH is like a sound. So then you have Jehoiakim and Jehoiachin, and it's just, in my brain, it's not enough of a distinction for me to separate those two. So Jehoiakim and Jehoiachin is what I think of. And so Jehoiachin was 18 years old when he became king. He reigned 3 months only in Jerusalem. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father had done. At that time, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up to Jerusalem, and the city was besieged. So at this point, Nebuchadnezzar has been king for 8 years. Okay, we see that down here in verse 12. Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, gave himself up to the king of Babylon, himself and his mother and his servants and his officials and his palace officials, and the king of Babylon took him prisoner in the 8th year of his reign. Ezekiel goes into captivity during this captivity. All right, Ezekiel goes into captivity at this time. Daniel at this point has been in Babylon for 8 years, and Daniel has been in leadership in Babylon for the last 7. And so all of that is happening at the same time. We're not going through it chronological, but maybe in season 2 in 2025, we can do some more chronological stuff for you, help you understand that a little bit better. So King Nebuchadnezzar carried off all the treasures of the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house, and cut in pieces all the vessels of gold of the Lord, which Solomon king of Israel made, as the Lord had foretold. He carried away all Jerusalem and all the officials and all the mighty men, 10,000 captives. This is the second captivity. Okay, he took a few people captive in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim. Now, 8 years later, after 3 months of Jehoiachin, he's taking more people captive. This is, by the way, where the 70 years begins. So there's 70 years of captivity, and this begins with the captivity of Jehoiachin. Okay? He carried away Jehoiachin to Babylon, the king's mother, the king's wives, his officials, his chief men of the land they took into captivity from Jerusalem to Babylon. This will not be the last we hear of Jehoiachin. He's also called Jeconiah in one of the prophets, and we'll see him again in a couple of the prophets as well. The king of Babylon brought captive to Babylon all the men of valor, 7,000, and the craftsmen and the metalworkers, 1,000 of all them, strong and fit for war. And the king of Babylon made Mattaniah, Jehoiachin's uncle, king in his place, and changed his name to Zedekiah. Zedekiah was 21 years old, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. All right, he's going to do what's evil in the sight of the Lord. Here's what's really interesting to me. And I find it fascinating. So Jeremiah, the prophet, tells, and we'll get to this in just a moment, but he's foretold to Zedekiah, he goes, you're going to be taken into captivity. He goes, you've rebelled against the Lord. You're going to be taken into captivity. And he goes, but you will never see the land. You're going to be taken into captivity, into a foreign land, but you'll never see the land. And so let's figure out how that happens. Now remember, Zedekiah is king for 11 years. In the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, on the 10th day of the month, so if you remember back to how we kind of kept track of those things back in Exodus, it's the 10th day of the month, and it's the 10th month, and it's the 9th year of Zedekiah's reign. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came with his army against Jerusalem and laid siege to it. They built siege works all around it, so the city was besieged until the 11th year of Zedekiah. And on the 9th day of the 4th month of the 11th year, the famine was so severe that there was no food for the people. A breach was made in the city, and all the men of the war fled by night by the way of the gate between the 2 walls. And they went in the direction of the Arabah, but the army of the Chaldeans pursued the king, overtook him in the plains of Jericho, and all of his army was scattered from him. They captured the king and brought him up to the king of Babylon. They passed sentence on him. They slaughtered all the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, and they put out the 2 eyes of Zedekiah and bound him in chains and took him to Babylon. So they catch King Zedekiah, they kill all of his sons in front of him, and after they kill all of his sons, they gouge out his own 2 eyes, which is what Jeremiah meant. You'll be taken into captivity but never see the land, because that's the judgment on King Zedekiah. In the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, that was the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, the king of the bodyguard, the servant, the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem. He burned the house of the Lord and the king's house and all the houses of Jerusalem. Every great house he burned down. And all the army of the Chaldeans who were with the captain of the guard broke down the walls around Jerusalem. The rest of the people who were left in the city and the deserters who had deserted to the king of Babylon, together with the rest of the multitude, Nebuzaradan carried off into exile. So here's what happens. The king of Babylon has come. What he's done is he's told Zedekiah, if you'll serve me, if you'll pay me tribute, I'll leave you alone. And Zedekiah does that for a few years, from the 4th year on to the 9th year, and then decides, I don't want to pay tribute anymore. I'm not paying the king of Babylon anymore. So the king of Babylon comes and besieges the city of Jerusalem for what amounts to about a year and a half, not quite a year and a half, and finally destroys Jerusalem, destroys the city, takes the last people into captivity. And this is kind of where the book of Jeremiah ends. The book of Jeremiah is a mess. It has 52 chapters. It's not in order. The 52 chapters are not in order. It's like putting a 52 chapter book on CD in and hitting random. It's just a shuffled mess. I'll explain that more when we get to the book of Jeremiah. But he kind of leaves some people in charge. He's brought the city to ruin, and a new guy is made governor over the city of Judah. remember Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar, he's in charge, and they put a guy in charge to kind of take care of the city, and it does not go well. He's murdered pretty quickly. And so his name is Gedaliah, and that story is mentioned here for us in 2 Kings 25, but it's also mentioned in the book of Jeremiah. And what we do have here is this. I want you to jump down to the very last section here of 2 Kings 25. It says, in the 37th year of the exile of Jehoiachin. Remember, he's the guy who was king for 3 months. He's been exiled and in prison for 37 years. In the 12th month, on the 27th day of the month. So we're going to say 27th day, 12th month, 37th year of exile. Evil Merodach, the king of Babylon, in the year that he began to reign, graciously freed Jehoiakim, king of Judah, from prison, spoke kindly to him, gave him a seat above all the seats of the kings who were with him in Babylon. So Jehoiachin put off his prison garments, and every day of his life he dined regularly at the king's table, and he was given an allowance by the king according to his daily needs as long as he lived. So Jehoiachin survives. He's the only one. So Jehoiakim dies, Zedekiah will end up dying. Jehoiachin, after 3 months, gets carried off and put in prison, where he lives for 37 years and is finally released. And remember, this 37 years is 37 years out of 70 years. They're going to be in captivity for 70 years, which means they have 33 more to go. At this point, Daniel has already been in power and helping lead Babylon for the last 36 years, because Daniel was raised to power after 1 year in captivity. And so all of this, Daniel's been in power longer than that, because add 8 to it. So 45-ish years is about how long Daniel has been in there. I'll explain more of that in the blog if you're really interested in the details. I geek out on this stuff. I love the timeline, and I promise you on this particular blog, it'll be a lengthy one, but I will give you kind of the timeline and how all the pieces fit together so that you can better understand the last few kings and the prophets that they correspond to. So the kings are done. Israel was destroyed 133 years earlier. Now Judah has been destroyed, and we are moving on. And tomorrow we are going to be in the book of Joel. It's only 3 chapters long. We're going to cover the entire thing tomorrow. And so join us for episode 147 in the book of Joel. And if you're wanting to read ahead, it's a very short read. It's only about 2.5 pages, 3 pages tops. So read Joel and be prepared to join us then. Thanks, and have a good day. Thank you so much for journeying with us today at Simpler Bible. Together, you and I have looked at another passage of Scripture and come to know the Bible a little bit better and enjoy God more fully. This video, along with all of our videos, can be found at simplerbible.com, where you can enjoy our Through the Bible in a Year course. You can also enjoy a wealth of resources, blog posts that take you a little bit deeper into the text, a Bible study format that you can use with your small groups or your family, and we're creating new content all the time, all with the commitment to help us be people who know and enjoy God more fully. Thank you so much for being part of it, and we can't wait to see you next time.